to My Sister's Kitchen. I'm Sister, and today's episode, we're going to learn how to make roasted potatoes and carrots. Follow along with me. So, even though I said today's episode was roasted potatoes and carrots, we're going to talk a little bit about substitutions today. Now, this recipe is specifically designed to be roasted in the oven, and that way you get that nice savory flavor that a lot of people like with a little bit of crisp, but our vegetables won't get to the point where they become mushy and soggy. Some people don't like that. So today we're going to use carrots, whole, and for my substitution, yams. Now, in this recipe, when the yams are roasted in the oven, they become a little bit sweet, and when you bite into them, you get a texture that's very smooth and rich because yams have a little extra starch in them than sweet potatoes. Could you use sweet potatoes in this recipe? Absolutely. Could you use potatoes? Yeah, any kind you prefer. Russets, Yukon, reds, the purple ones. Me personally, I like using Yukons, but I think this is becoming my favorite by far. So, to start, we need a pound of carrots and a pound of yams. You don't know how much that is? Kitchen scale. The kitchen scale works great for weighing out your fruits and vegetables. It also helps if you find a recipe that ends up being measured by weight rather than by volume. Because sometimes weighing your ingredients by weight is perfect, because then you get an exact quantity of what you need. So we want to start by washing our vegetables, and we want to peel them. Now, some people I know like having potato skins on their potatoes, and that's absolutely okay. Not everyone likes the same thing. I know that I prefer skins on my red potatoes, but I don't like the skins on my russet potatoes. For Yukon Golds, it's kind of 50-50. It depends on what I'm feeling for the day. Sometimes you just don't feel like chewing as much. What can I say? Sometimes we all get a little lazy. So I'm going to wash and peel these, and then I'll have them here and I'll show you how to cut your vegetables. Okay. Now that we got our vegetables peeled, we're going to cut them into the proper shapes. Now, you're probably wondering, do I have to have exactly a pound? The answer is no, you don't. But a little extra, because as you're peeling, and you probably learned this in science class, as you're peeling, you are losing material off your vegetables. And you're going to lose a little more material because you want to take and cut this part off right here. This is the top, the head, where the stem goes, the part you pull from the ground if you're using fresh vegetables out of your garden. But that's the part you want to cut off. The other part you want to cut off is the scent. Why? Well, it's thin and spindly. So if you were to try and roast this inside the oven with your other parts of the vegetables, it's going to burn. And honestly, it's not going to taste that great. And it's going to make your whole house smell like burnt carrot. And who wants that? So we're going to cut the tops and the tips off. And me personally, I like to have a bowl set aside next to me. That way I don't have to try and put it on a paper towel, get countertop dirty. So, starting with the carrots, you want to cut them into 1-inch thick pieces. Don't know how big that is? When school supplies go on sale, go and buy yourself a nice, clear ruler. You want to know why? I can throw this in the dishwasher if I get it dirty. I can use this to measure my vegetables until I feel more comfortable with how big an inch or two is when you're slicing something like this. So you could do it your fancy smancy way and just be like, oh, an inch is about here. Or, which you want a big bowl to throw your veggies in. You'll learn why in a little bit. Or I can take several veggies at once. Cut them that way. Simple, it's easy. And I get to hear that satisfying crunch of the carrots when you cut them. Or you can do it by hand, one at a time. Now sometimes, when you get to where the stem is, these carrots weren't that way this time, but when you get closer to the top, the carrots can usually be bigger. So in that case, what you'd want to do is with the bigger ones, you just take your knife, cut them in half. That way they cook just as evenly. And that's exactly what we want to make sure we have, is all our vegetables cut evenly to make sure that when they're baking, they're going to cook evenly. Makes it easier. You don't have to play the guessing game of, oh, this is the biggest one, but then I have tiny ones, and then it gets uneven, and then it becomes a huge pain in the butt later. And no one likes that. So next, for the potatoes, or in my case, yam, you can do the same thing. Cut off the ends. And as we're going through and cutting this vegetable up, you can see that there's some spots on here. Basically what I'm going to end up doing is, as I'm cutting, I'm just going to cut those pieces off. So with a potato or a yam or anything that's rather big, and you can use this method for any other potatoes, what I prefer to do, which becomes very easy, is first things first. Cut it in half. Look, now it doesn't roll away, because if it rolls away, chances are you might cut a finger or 5, and we don't want that. No one wants that. Who wants to go to the ER? That's one more bill I do not want to have. So I cut that, and now I'm gonna kind of cut off some of the browning pieces, and some of that's not always bad stuff, like apples and bananas, for example. Apples and bananas, they tend to have browning spots when they're exposed to oxygen. And that's not a bad thing. It's just saying that you need to eat meat faster. So now I'm going to cut 1-inch rounds as well. And it doesn't have to be exactly an inch, because as you can see, if I were to stick that in there, this isn't going to cook evenly. So what I do is I cut it in half again, and then I cut it in half. Some of the pieces, like some of these rounds, when you cut it into 4, they can be a little big. So I'm just going to take and cut them down to size again. And I know the recipe says cubes, but how do you make stuff square out of a round object? I never understood that with wasting a lot of material, unless you do it this way. But then again, if you look, if I just wanted it cubed, what am I supposed to do with these? I don't know. Who says it has to look pretty to taste good? If you're just cooking for your little family, and they're like mine, we're just food, eat, hungry, don't care, then it works out perfectly. Just because food doesn't look pretty doesn't mean it doesn't taste good. It's gonna taste good when you put the effort into it. See, and I tossed those in there, but I'm not happy with this size, so I'm gonna cut it again. And sometimes when you're looking through your bowl, you might decide, yeah, some of these are a little too big. It doesn't hurt to go back through and just make sure everything is uniform in size. Yeah, almost spilled it. It's okay. Okay. Now I have all these vegetables cut up. That looks okay. I have a dirty cutting board and I have a dirty knife. These, no, I did not just cut myself. These, I'm going to quickly rinse off. And when I'm done, because I took the time and the effort to clean stuff off as I'm cooking, I'm going to have less dishes later. And who doesn't like to have a clean sink? I have my veggies in a large bowl. I'm going to move my compost away. So now, we're going to get to the nitty-gritty of this. So I have my vegetables. And in case you're wondering, I am prepping this for later. So I'm making all this stuff now. I'm going to stick it in the fridge. And about an hour before dinner time, I'm going to start preheating my oven, getting my cookie sheet ready, and bake these. And I'll take you through that part of it. But for now, we're going to dress these up. So, in the microwave, I have 2 tablespoons of butter that I melted. So I'm going to grab that. As you can see the layers of fat. I like just to give it a little swirl. Next, I'm going to add my olive oil. I need 3 tablespoons of olive oil. And I'm going to let this last one drip a little bit, just because with like the metal ones, sometimes oils like to stick into the bottom of it here. And we want to get every last bit of olive oil in there. And I'm going to put this away, so that way I don't have to worry about it later, and that's less for me to clean. Next, we're going to use our tiny whisk and stir that olive oil and the butter together. Just kind of mix it up. Next, I'm going to put my spices. And you can put any spices you want into this. Salt, pepper, Italian seasoning. Some people like to add cumin or cayenne pepper or paprika for a little extra kick. Say if maybe you're doing like taco omelets, you can make just potatoes to go with it. Or if you're making breakfast burritos, you can make more of a savory flavor. For dinner, depending on what you're doing, like if it's steak or meatloaf or hamburgers or something like that, you could make these with just salt and pepper if you wanted to. Or just pepper. Honestly, if you just want to do butter and olive oil, I'm not going to hate on you for that. Everyone has their own unique palate. But for me, I'm choosing garlic, minced onion, rub sage, and black pepper. Does it have to be dried? No. Can it be fresh? Yeah. Can it be freeze-dried? Absolutely. But knowing how much to put in from fresh to dried is a little tricky. Sometimes a tablespoon of minced garlic, if you use powder, you're going to want to use a lot less because it's dried and crumbled down. So just keep that in mind when you're going from one type of product to another. So I prepped ahead of time and used 1 teaspoon to measure all this out. I'm going to add my garlic. Stir, 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 stir. Put in my onion. Doesn't really matter which order you put them in. My rub sage. That's going to absorb a lot of liquid just because of the type of texture it is. Stir, stir, stir. And my pepper. And it smells really, really good. Set this on this paper towel here. Set this aside. And now what I'm going to do is drizzle over the top. Drizzle, 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 drizzle. Now I can grab my whisk again. And just kind of try your best to scrape down the side. Get it all in there. Now comes my favorite part of this process. Swirl around. Toss. Because all your liquid is going to go to the bottom, so I'm shaking it around. And now this is prepped and ready to go when I'm ready for dinner. Okay, as promised, I have pulled my yams and carrots out of the fridge. And now I have preheated the oven to 400 degrees. So I have a cookie sheet. I love having extra wide tin foil because, as you can see, this is a huge cookie sheet. And the other ones, I would have to put 2 layers of tin foil on here, which is fine. You could totally do that. Just know that when the butter melts in the oven, that you're gonna have spillage underneath and you're gonna have to wash your cookie sheet. And that is what I'm trying to avoid. There's more dishes than necessary. So take my cookie sheet, I put the foil on, and I just tuck it under the edges and kind of crumple it underneath. Okay, now that that's done, take your cooking spray and just kind of do a light coat. And pour your veggies onto the tray. And I kind of usually shake it around. You want to make sure that the yams, or potatoes, and your carrots are in a single layer, and they're kind of spread out enough that if they're touching a little, it's okay. Because I had prepped this earlier, you see this is chunks of butter and olive oil. That's okay, because as it all melts together, you're going to end up with a layer of really, really good flavoring in the bottom, which makes it easier, because this will go in the oven for about 30 to 40 minutes. And what I like to do is stir it halfway through just so it kind of mixes and continues to coat the vegetables. And then as one side gets browned, you stir it, and then the other side can get browned as well. So I'll bring you back and show you what it looks like about halfway through cooking and when we're done with it. It's been about 16 minutes. I set the timer for 30. So now I'm gonna open this up. You can hear it sizzling. You can see that the potatoes are already yams are starting to get brown. You can see that the butter is melting in here. And I'm just moving them around to make sure that they don't stick too much to the pan. Even though we put cooking spray, I've had it before where cooking spray, even though it's on there, it still sticks and it sucks. So, move those, kind of shift it around. And then I am also going to rotate the pan, and I'm going to shut the oven. Oops, bring that forward a little more. Push that back in. Shut that. Let it continue to cook. So, my veggies are getting nice and brown. I'm going to set them up here, and I'm not going to turn my oven off because that would be silly. What I'm going to do is the tender test, where I poke the vegetables. See how they're cracking and opening? That means my vegetables are really soft. They look good. They're tender. Let's poke a carrot. Oh yeah, those are doing really good. So I'm going to turn my oven off now that I know that my food is actually fully cooked. And I'm gonna give it probably a good 5 or 6 minutes to cool off because it's hot. And I don't really feel like burning my mouth right now. So we'll come back when these have cooled down a little bit and we'll try them out. Now that these have cooled off, I'm going to try some. Yam. It's like eating a sweet mashed potato wrapped in a slightly crispy crust It just melts in your mouth. And it's very light on the butter, but you know that flavor is there. Let's try carrot. I don't know if you can hear it, but the carrots are still just slightly, just a little bit crunchy. They hold their texture well. And as you're chewing, it's not taking as much effort to eat. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make some scrambled eggs for dinner, and we're going to have some yams and carrots with it. You could use these for pot pies, you could use them for soups, you could use them with chicken, meatloaf, steaks, you name it, this would be a good side dish, especially around the holidays, because you can get up early when you're prepping the rest of your stuff, get it in there, set it aside, and then you can just spend the rest of the day relaxing. And when it comes time to making dinner for that holiday occasion, throw it in there. Or for soup season, which is any time from the start of fall, well, just it's all year round, really. But other than that, these make a really good pairing. Anyways, that's it for My Sister's Kitchen. I'm Big Sister. Love to see you next time. Eat up.